Yeah, so again, I'm Caroline, the Wellbeing Practitioner at Carers in Bedfordshire, and this is session 1 of 6 of managing challenging behaviour with primary school aged children. So throughout our sessions together, we're going to look at learning about your child and their behaviour, enhancing your relationship and supporting children's communication, building self-esteem and improving behaviour, the importance of routine and boundaries, reducing problematic behaviour through withdrawing attention, and supporting emotional regulation through calm time. And you might have one child, you might have multiple children, and as you probably know as parents, there's not kind of a one size fits all, and often the technique that you use one day doesn't work the next, and a lot of it is about kind of being adaptive. There is no kind of manual on how to be a parent, and a lot of these things change, so kind of just feeling open to trying new things, and hopefully through the groups you feel comfortable kind of to share with each other tips about what works or maybe what doesn't work, and we can kind of find together kind of what works that can help manage the behaviour. So this whole programme is based on the kind of Manchester model, which is an evidence-based practice that kind of shows that guided self-help working with parents is really beneficial rather than working with children directly, just because as parents you're experts on your children, even if you don't feel like it all the time, but you're the one that's in their life for a longer period of time. And myself as a practitioner, when I work with children, I only work for them for a couple of months or so. So as a parent, if you've got those techniques and tips and you know how to kind of implement it into their life, and you can just remember things a bit more. So yeah, for today's session, we're going to be learning about your child and their behaviour. We're going to go through a quick working together agreement, talking about their expectations and a programme summary, looking at SMART goals, looking at problematic behaviours, attention and ABC charts, looking at how thoughts, feelings and behaviours affect each other in regards to kind of the cognitive behavioural therapy model, and then also really important, how to look after yourself. And at the end of each session, we're going to do a quick kind of feedback, rating your well-being of the week, and kind of GBO, which stands for kind of a goal-based outcomes. So we're going to set goals today and we'll kind of keep track of them over the next 6 weeks. So we're not expecting it to go from 0 to 10 over the next 6 weeks, but just kind of keeping a track of what's kind of changing for you is really helpful. So if there's for any reason any technical difficulties, I will stop the session and just restart it during the same link. The joys of working online means that we don't have to be in the same room, but also means that internet cuts out, people have to join and rejoin. Kind of being at home, if you've got children to attend to in the background, please feel free to kind of nip in and out as the sessions are being recorded. If you can be punctual when we start the sessions, that's great, but again, it's being recorded, so don't worry too much about that. Keeping confidential, again, because it's being recorded, just being mindful for what you share other parents or families might hear, so just share what you feel comfortable sharing, and that might be regards to kind of keeping your camera on or off, or muting or unmuting, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Mute yourself when you're not speaking if possible, just to kind of avoid any feedback. Often we have lots of people on the calls, you can kind of hear things going on in the background, and again that helps with confidentiality. You kind of don't know if their child's going to come in the room and say something that you might not want shared with the group. If at all possible, keeping other phones or devices on silent, so we kind of not ringing in the background. Again, if a call pops up, feel free to kind of turn your cameras off, take the call and come back, just so it doesn't disrupt everyone else. And participate if you feel comfortable, and just taking turns and making sure everyone kind of feels this is a safe space to share their ideas. So kind of what are your expectations? I covered a bit already kind of previously, but it's weekly attendance for 6 sessions. Again, they'll be recorded and sent out to you if for whatever reason you can't attend, but it's kind of most beneficial if you can, and then you can ask questions as we go. Like I said, working with parents is really beneficial, as in kind of you're expert on your child, you kind of know what things may not work based on your experience, and that's why we kind of choose to work with parents rather than the children directly for challenging behaviour. And it's evidence-based and guided self-help, so there will be kind of an element of kind of home practice that we'll talk at the end of each session, of things to kind of have a go at while you're at home. We've just got one new attendee. Can I just take your name? It just says yoga on yours. Can you unmute yourself just so I can just take a note of it for my register?
Sorry, Charlene Green.
Thank you. Just so you know, Charlene, the sessions are being recorded, so if you feel comfortable to have your camera on, that's fine. If you don't, feel free to turn it off. But just so you know, kind of in terms of confidentiality, anything that you share in the group, it'll be recorded and might be sent to other parents who can't be with us today, just so that you're aware.
Okay.
And you'll get a copy of it as well after the session.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a pyramid of the techniques we're going to be going through in our sessions together. And in regards to kind of the bottom of the pyramid is ones that we want to kind of use the majority of the time, whereas the ones towards the top we want to use more infrequently. And the one in purple, positive attention, is what we're going to be looking at today. So the first step is about SMART goals, and you might have come across these within a work-based or working in schools or kind of any other areas of your life. And it's making goals really specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And what we're going to do kind of just now is spend a couple of minutes just thinking about your family life, your relationship with your child, and thinking about what specifically do you want to kind of gain from these 6 sessions? Is there a specific behaviour you want to see more of, a specific behaviour that you want to see less of? And just having some time to think, okay, over the next 6 weeks, what am I going to be tracking to see if we kind of have improvements of? So specific, kind of what exactly do I want to change or achieve? So it could be that kind of you want to reduce, I want less tantrums, but what exactly do you want to achieve by that? Is it just you want your child to fulfill a request after 3 times of asking? Is it that you would like them to not cry every time that you say no? Is it that you would like them to be able to ask for something without being physically aggressive? Is it that you would like to reduce the amount of times they're swearing at you? Kind of really specifically, what would you like to change or achieve? And then measurable. How will I know I've reached my goal? So we can just say I want my child to behave better, but what is that exactly going to look like? And if we know what it's going to look like when we've achieved that goal, it helps us to keep able of tracking how we're improving it. So is it that kind of a reduction in tantrums? Is it that they are attending school? Is it that they are playing with their siblings? Is it that they are kind of helping out around the house? Is it that they're able to communicate how they're feeling and talk about what's going on for them? Kind of how exactly are you going to measure that this kind of goal that you're working towards is being reached or progressed towards? And then thinking about whether it's attainable. So how can I accomplish this goal? So do you think it's something that you can work kind of step by step towards? And also, is it realistic for both me and my child? So something that you can help your child to work towards, but kind of no one's perfect. We're never going to have a child that doesn't cry or doesn't have a tantrum or doesn't get upset, just because we as humans, we all get like that. Even as adults, we can have tantrums about things not going our way. So just kind of thinking, is the goal you're making really realistic, and is it something that your child wants to work towards as well as you? Because that's really important. If the kind of your child doesn't understand why the behaviour is difficult, then they're going to be very reluctant to want to change that behaviour because they're not going to see it as a problem. And why is the goal relevant for you or important to your child? Again, that kind of links in with motivation. If the child thinks the behaviour is completely fine, there's nothing wrong with it, then again there's going to be that lack of motivation, and it's not going to be important to them to make progress towards, and it's going to be really difficult to help make changes if your child's kind of not on board about it. But maybe if you can kind of speaking with your child to think about, oh, okay, when you shout at me, it makes me feel really sad, or I find it really difficult. Or even your child might be aware that actually they do want to go to school or play with friends, but they find it really difficult kind of emotionally regulating themselves, and those sorts of things are hard. So kind of thinking about kind of what is relevant to you and important to you and your child. And then time base. So when do you want to accomplish this goal by? So you might have a time kind of limit. It might be that you want them to get into school for a certain time. It might be something that you want to work towards in this academic year. It might be kind of by their next birthday. It might be kind of by the time they kind of reach that transition into secondary school, anything like that. Or it could just be something more vague in terms of something we want to kind of work on as they progress towards their teen or adult life, if you kind of want to work on their independence. Does that all make sense? Has anyone got any questions on that? Okay, fab. So this is kind of an example. A general goal would be, I would like my child to be better behaved, whereas a SMART goal would be, by Christmas, I would like my child to ask for things nicely at least 4 days a week. So there you've got by Christmas as your kind of time. I would like my child to ask for things nicely is really specific, and it's also kind of phrased positively. Instead of kind of saying, I don't want them to do this, it's saying what you would like to see instead. And then kind of be a really measurable thing there, at least 4 days a week. So if you can kind of take a time to think, kind of setting your own SMART goal. So just kind of take a minute or so and have a think of what you want to work on. And if you can just put in the chat, you can either put it to the whole group or to me privately, just either your goal or what your goal is focused towards. So if it is towards like school attendance, general behaviour, tantrums, anything like that, you can write out the full goal if you think that would be helpful, or just a short bit about what your goal is focused towards. That would be really helpful for me, so I can make sure kind of future sessions are tailored towards you. And I won't kind of read them out for everyone, but just kind of so they're there, and I can kind of keep track of them as we go week on week, because like I said earlier, we're going to kind of rate them and make sure we can monitor them as we go through. Yeah, so just put in the chat like a short sentence or the full goal, whatever you want, just a kind of a thing of what you want to work on with your child over the next couple of weeks. And I'll make a note of them. Okay, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Charlene. Ian, if you have a chance to write it in the chat, that would be great. I'm just going to move on to the next thing. If you're not finished with your goal just yet, that's absolutely fine. But if you can write it in the chat before the end of the session, that would be great. Okay. So next we're going to look at what do adults pay attention to. So we're going to watch this video together, and just kind of really cleverly shows kind of some things we often do as parents or as adults in regards to kind of paying attention to certain behaviours and not others.
Imagine the scene. You're walking past your living room and you see your children playing nicely on the floor with their toys. What would you do? Many parents would see this as the ideal opportunity to make a start on dinner, or finish the next chapter of the book they're reading. Many parents would not want to disturb their children in this situation, or they would hardly notice the behaviour happening at all. Now imagine a different scene. You're walking past your living room and you see your children fighting or drawing on the walls. What would you do? Many parents would go immediately into the room and begin to shout at their children to get them to stop what they're doing. It's important to remember that people do this all the time. However, as children's behaviour is centred around getting a parental response, being aware of where you give your attention is really important. We can do this by looking at the attention table. The attention table explains that if a carer were to provide attention for not acceptable behaviour, this behaviour is likely to increase. Going into a room and shouting at your child gives them a big dose of attention. If a carer were not to provide any attention to this behaviour and ignore it, this behaviour is likely to decrease. As in the example of the child playing nicely in the living room, if we were to ignore this behaviour, there's less chance that this behaviour will happen again in the future. However, if we were able to provide attention to this behaviour using praise, excitement or hugs, we will see more of that behaviour. So being aware of where we focus our attention, we are able to focus on behaviours we want to see more of and ignore not acceptable behaviours.
Yeah, so that kind of video, really, when we see it like that, it makes a lot of sense. Often when we kind of see our children playing nicely or being really calm, we think, oh great, I can get on with my to-do list. But actually noticing those times and giving that attention there to saying, oh well done, that's great, I can see you playing really nicely. We're giving them that attention that shows them that we want to see more of that. In regards if children are fighting or doing things, yes, kind of withdrawing attention is something we recommend, and then we'll cover it in a kind of a future session. Obviously there's some sort of behaviours that we need to intervene when the children aren't being kept safe or they're at risk of hurting themselves or others, and those ones, yes, we'll need to intervene. But kind of often if we are seeing these negative behaviours, just kind of turning our attention away and focusing on something else can decrease that behaviour over time. And this is just kind of showing it there on another table kind of still. So yeah, the ones we want to work towards when we see okay or good behaviour, we want to give attention there to increase that behaviour. And when we're seeing not okay or challenging behaviour, we want to try and ignore that behaviour so it decreases. So something that can help us do that is looking at ABC charts. So it might be something that you've come across before, might be something that you've used before or is used in school with your child or children, but it stands for antecedent, which means what happens before, behaviour and consequence. So it's looking at instance of, say, a tantrum, what's happened before the tantrum, what behaviours are displayed during the tantrum, and then what's the consequence of that behaviour. So watch this kind of video that it kind of goes through a chart with you.
It's morning time and you're getting your children ready for school. It's really busy and you've only got a short amount of time before you need to be out the door. When you ask your child to put their shoes on, they throw their shoes across the room. They begin to scream and shout. They even begin to lash out at you when you try to put their shoes on for them. To begin to understand this behaviour, we can use our A, B, C's. A stands for antecedents. This means what happened before. In this example, it was the chaos of getting ready in the morning and then a request to put your child's shoes on. B stands for behaviour, which means what behaviour is your child displaying? In this example, it would be the throwing of shoes, shouting and screaming, and hitting you when you try to help. C stands for consequences, which means what happens as a result, or what happened next. In this situation, you would take your child off somewhere quiet to put their shoes on for them. From mapping out a situation like this, we can begin to understand what happens in situations and what might be maintaining the behaviour. We can see how the child might understand they get one-to-one time with mum if they begin to behave like this in the morning. We can now think of other ways to respond to this situation, and we can do this using the attention.
Yeah, so this is just the same example I've just kind of in the video mapped out onto a slide for you all to see. So but change it slightly. So when and where you put, say, maybe 4 p.m, home after school. And that's often a time that we see heightened challenging behaviours. We hear of the 4 o'clock meltdown. And when we think about it, our child's been at school all day, they have had lots of demands on them regarding what work to do, where to sit, keeping their uniform nice and neat, going break times, lunch times, lots and lots of routine, which some children do great in, but others find it really difficult. And being on their best behaviour at school. Often we get challenging behaviour at home, and it can be really difficult because schools don't see that side of our child, and they act in that challenging way because they feel safe at home, which is a good sign that they feel safe, but doesn't make it easy for us as parents to be the only ones that are kind of experiencing it, because often we can feel like the school think that we're making it up, or that think, oh, you must be the problem because you're the only person that's acting up like that for them, and things like that. And it's not the case. It's just that all the demands of the school day get too much, and this child gets home, and that's just kind of it. They kind of blow their top, and they're tired, they're hungry, they're exhausted, and they just want to relax. And maybe it's asking something. For this example, there's Mum and Billy, and she asked him to change out of his clothes before playing because he didn't want to get his school uniform to get dirty. And that's just one more request that kind of just the straw on the camel's back sort of thing. And for some children, kind of they do have difficulties in general kind of accepting requests or responding to requests. So it can be just kind of limiting those sorts of requests. But things like ABC charts can help you map where the difficulties are coming up, if there's certain triggers. So if it is consistently after school, is it kind of every time that you're asking them to do a specific task, like getting changed, or is it when they're kind of just responding to screen time, or is it when they're being asked kind of to help around the house, or is it at bedtime, is it mornings, or is it a mixture of all of them? And mapping things onto kind of an ABC chart can help you see some patterns and help you see what behaviour is leading on from the next. And this is kind of what we recommend doing, and this is kind of what we're going to be looking as kind of a home practice task, and not expecting you to map every single kind of bit of behaviour for your whole week, but just a couple of examples, and it just kind of helps us to be mindful about what's going on. So for this example, it's home after school, asking a child to change out of clothes before playing, and then the behaviour was Billy yelled no and then ran out in the garden. I followed and asked him again, and then he spat at me. And then what's the consequence? So in this scenario, the parent yelled back and then went inside. Billy played outside in his school clothes. I came out later and explained to Billy why he should change his clothes, and that spitting isn't nice. We cuddled together and watched a TV. And then describe your feelings. So it's really important as a parent as well to understand our own feelings, how we respond. Sometimes we respond in the heat of the moment and then we feel guilty afterwards, or sometimes actually the situation is really stressful for us because we're going through a difficult time, and our feelings as parents are also valid as well as our children's. So for this parent's example, I was angry, then upset with themselves for yelling. And then it's really important as well to understand the function of the behaviour. So for this example, it was an avoidance behaviour. So Billy acted this way so he didn't have to change out of his clothes, and he got what he wanted. Because he spat and yelled and Mum yelled back, as you can kind of see here, Billy played outside in his school clothes, which is what he wanted. There was no kind of delay in getting his reward, and that's when if we have it mapped out like this, we can actually see kind of maybe our behaviours or in response to behaviours are kind of actually encouraging the challenging behaviour in some cases. Not to say it's our fault, but just kind of noticing those patterns can be really helpful. So in terms of function of behaviour, there's generally 4 functions of behaviour. Obviously, it's not always as clear cut. Sometimes children's behaviour can be falling into multiple categories, but we can use the acronym SEAT for this. So sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So a sensory behaviour, as it kind of says there, provides sensory experience, but behaviour that feels good to do. And this could be a difficult behaviour, as in children that maybe hit the head on the wall because they like the sensation it feels on their head. It could be scratching, it could be biting their nails, it could be kind of some children can kind of bite door handles or radiators because they like the taste of the metal. It could be even kind of maybe having a physical fight with a sibling because they quite like the sensation of that rough and tumble. but just kind of understanding maybe why behaviour leads on is for kind of a sensory need. So, and normally a sensory need is kind of, especially alone, things like hitting the head on things, or scratching, or nail biting, or kind of pulling hair, or anything like that, is often, children often do to themselves kind of when they're alone, and normally that can be heightened when they're anxious or not really sure how they're feeling. It's a way of kind of emotionally regulating. For the example of hitting the head on the wall, it kind of, if you've ever hit your head, you kind of have a fuzzy feeling and it's hard to think. If a child is feeling an overwhelmed sensation, their thoughts are confusing, hitting the head might be a way of their thoughts stopping for a second, and it kind of is classified within that kind of self-harming behaviours. But if you kind of look at it in the terms of they're doing it for a sensory feedback, you can kind of understand the behaviour a bit more. And we also look at these functions as, if we know the function of the behaviour, we can try and implement things to try and replace those behaviours. So for example, hitting the head, we want to reduce that. It could be just spending time stroking your child's head. It could be getting fidget toys that have a kind of a sensory element. It could be messy or wet play, or even doing things like baking bread, making pizza, doing stuff with their hand to give them that sensory feedback in a different way that's kind of more helpful for them. And the second one is E for escape. So you might experience when a child runs out the room when they don't want to do something, or rips up their homework, and that's just removing an undesired activity or an action. And this can be, say, for homework, if it's too hard, if it's too easy, if it's too boring, if it's too scary, those sorts of tasks. If they just kind of that direct avoidance, they kind of they feel like they don't have to do it. And then attention is a big one. Kind of acting, and as we saw in the example of the video, children fighting in the room, they're going to get the response of a parental attention. So kind of doing something to get a reaction, just because they want to spend time with someone, kind of, it's really natural for children to want attention, and we can't always give it to them as parents and adults. We may have jobs, other children to look after, kind of dinner to make, things around the house to do, and we can't give a 100% undivided attention all the time. If our children is asking for attention at specific times that we've noticed from the ABC chart, maybe we need to give that attention as soon as they get in from school, and then kind of then ask them to do something. Or maybe it's the opposite, maybe they need some time by themselves to kind of calm down from the school day before we kind of spend some time with them one-on-one. And then the last one is tangible, so provides preferred item or activity. So kind of it's often tied around screen time. They if you're kind of taking a screen off for them, their behaviour might skyrocket because they want that that thing back, or it could be for an activity or a specific thing that they want to do. Has anyone got any questions on any of that, or does that make sense for everyone?
Sorry, just can you hear me? Just going
Yes,
back
I can.
to the previous one that we've done, not this one, the previous one.
This one.
The one to praise good behaviour and ignore bad.
Yeah, this one, yes.
But what happens, because if you ignore the bad behaviour, they might continue to do it, but they're not. It's not good to let them.
Yeah.
So yeah. They don't realise that they think, oh, I'm getting away with it. Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
I can understand that bit, if I'm honest. I get the praise bit. I don't get the negative behaviour, because they're just going to continue doing it.
Yeah, and that's often what we kind of think is going to happen if we ignore it. Sometimes we think, if I'm ignoring that they're swearing at me, that's going to teach them that behaviour is okay, because they're not being challenged for it. Yeah. And often we might see a spike in that behaviour before it decreases, but kind of through general research, obviously it doesn't work for everyone, but through general research, because we're kind of not responding to every time that they swear at us, children actually are doing that to get our attention, maybe not so kind of cut and dry, but actually not reacting to it, or even saying, I don't like the way that you're speaking to me, I'll speak to you when you're ready to use kind words, or something like that. That's a way for us ignoring that behaviour, not addressing it. And we can use a statement like that, or kind of saying, if they're having a tantrum or throwing things around, being like, that's not how we get what we want, I'm ready to talk to you when you've calmed down. So we are ignoring the behaviour, but maybe kind of saying that phrase or what the behaviour that you would like to see instead might help. Sometimes it works straight away, kind of turning our back, leaving the room. The child can actually be shocked, being like, oh, what I'm doing isn't getting the response that I want. But kind of, yeah, the research has shown that actually kind of ignoring that behaviour doesn't increase it, which was what we often think it will do. But there are some behaviours that are kind of, say, for example, hitting head on the wall. It is kind of something that you would have to intervene with, even if it's just putting a pillow in the way or something like that, because obviously it's kind of harming in the long term, or if children are fighting with siblings. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
So that's okay if they're like, you know, probably, you know, for example, hitting the head, or like what, you know, like you was, it's okay if it's just them that it's affecting. It's when and the other child in the household that it becomes a big, it does become, I can't just ignore it, because I've got that everything gets to her and he knows it, and I've got that problem, so I can't ignore his bad behavior. If it was just him throwing a tantrum, I could easily just shut the door and go, that's fine. But it's when it's the other child, you know, do you intervene, or do you know, what, it's like, what point do I step in and how do I deal with it? But yeah, so I can't ignore that behaviour if it's including my daughter as well. So yeah, that's sorry, that's where my head's at with that.
That's it's a really good point to raise, and it's something we cover in a future session about withdrawing attention, of kind of when is it helpful, which you kind of said for a tantrum, and if it's just himself that it's affecting, where are the times that it's harder to intervene. Yes, when there's other siblings involved, other children involved, when they're physically hurting themselves or others, and kind of that intervention is needed from an adult or a parent. And we can ignore in different ways. It can just be kind of point blank turning away, leaving the room, or it can just be addressing the behaviour, but not with a consequence, like I kind of saying before, like, oh, you can't talk to your sister like that, kind of, you need to kind of go into your room, or physically removing them if they're small enough to kind of be moved safely, those sorts of things. But it's something we'll kind of cover in kind of future sessions, but this is kind of generally how it works. Okay, no problem. So this is just kind of summarising what we've done so far. So kind of challenging behaviour results from a child finding it difficult or not being able to self-regulate. So from the functions of behaviour, maybe they want one of these specific things and don't know how to ask, saying they don't know how to say, this homework's too hard for me, I need some help. Their response is actually just to refuse to do it, because it's actually quite difficult to think about how we're feeling, label that feeling, understand why we're experiencing that feeling, and then communicate it to someone else. It's something that we learn over time, and even understanding our emotions is something that we understand over time. So it's easier to kind of automatically go to that challenging behaviour, rather than kind of self-regulating. Attention needing is normal and healthy. I know it says healthy, I just not put ly on the end, but yeah, kind of all our children need attention, and we want to give it to them as much as we can, but kind of using that challenging behaviour to get attention is a completely normal thing, and often lots of us experience kind of challenging behaviour from our children, and that's not to say it's anyone's fault. It's very common. Giving positive attention encourages positive behaviour. So spending time with our children and giving them positive praise kind of does encourage that positive behaviour, because the child thinks, oh, if I do this, it kind of notices, child notices the causality, that when I do this, I get this reaction. And whether that's a sticker, whether that's a hug, whether that's a high five, whether that's verbal praise, kind of children respond to different things. They get that kind of positive reward. And remembering as well that you're in a unique position as a parent to help your child to regulate their emotions and behaviour. You're in the household with them, kind of maybe not as much if they're at school, but you're also kind of in that position to kind of model to them kind of how to emotionally regulate, or kind of understanding what's going on for them at home and helping them to kind of make sense of things, so they're able to better self-regulate over time. Has anyone got any questions before I move on to the next thing? You're good? Fab. Okay, so we're going to look at thoughts, feelings, behaviour, which is a CBT-based cycle, and it can be helpful to kind of understand how the same situation can affect people differently. And we might notice that in our children. We might have multiple children, they act differently or get stressed out by different things or get wound up by different things or display different behaviours. So kind of the CBT cycle is that our thoughts affect how we feel, which influences our behaviour, which affects our thoughts. And we can be in a kind of a neutral cycle, a negative cycle, a positive cycle, but in general it kind of goes through this circular system. So if we think of an example, like you go outside in the morning and you step in some dog poo, and you can go outside and you can think, oh, number 7 down the street, they did that on purpose. And our feeling from that might be really angry because you feel that they've done it on purpose. There's been some sort of ongoing feud on the road, anything like that, and you end up having an argument and then you're late for work, and that can fuel this cycle because then you're late for work and then you still feel really angry, and it kind of goes round. The same scenario could be that the same thing happens, but we think, oh no, this always happens to me, I'll be late and I'll get fired. So it's an example of catastrophizing. That small kind of incident is blown up to kind of losing your job. You might feel anxious about kind of turning up to work late, or feeling upset that kind of you feel that the world's against you, feel like everything always goes wrong, and then kind of maybe that it all gets too much and you actually go back inside the house and you call in sick to work because you can't cope with the anxiety or the upset. And a third kind of example would be, this is annoying, I need to get that meeting or start that shift. So feeling really annoyed that that's happened, but kind of calm overall, and your response is to kind of change the shoes quickly and then head back to work, and you kind of explain the situation. So kind of those 3 examples, the same situation, but depending on our different thoughts, and there can be different behaviours, and that can be the same for both us and for our children. So that's kind of really helpful to know as well. When our thoughts start to affecting our feelings, we have knowing when to intervene to kind of stop the cycle. So if we change any of these things, if we change our thought, it changes the cycle. If we change our feeling, we can change the cycle. If we change our behaviour, it can change the cycle. And kind of knowing what sort of things help us to calm down and think of things rationally is really helpful. And the first step of that is knowing how to look after yourself. As a parent, kind of normally our kids come first, or maybe our partners, our jobs, all those sort of kind of caring responsibilities, and we become bottom of the pile. And if we are bottom of the pile, we can't care as best we can. We can't pour from an empty cup. You've already heard before, like put your oxygen mask on before helping others. And that's really, really important to kind of know when things are getting too much for you, and knowing kind of when you need to take 5 minutes where possible to kind of look after yourself. And that can be spending time outside, that could be kind of incorporating exercise. Staying hydrated is really important. Drinking lots of water can actually help to regulate your mood. Getting good night's sleep, which is not always easy with children, but very, very important. It's the first thing that kind of we struggle with when we're feeling low or anxious or stressed, but really, really important kind of in our general well-being. Eating kind of nutritious meals. Obviously, normally the quick unhealthy stuff is the stuff that's most delicious and easy to grab on the go, but making sure that we're getting all those nutrients for both us and our children is really important, help looking after ourselves. And also kind of spending time doing things that we enjoy, whether that's hobbies, reading, kind of doing puzzles, running, whatever you kind of enjoy doing, kind of thinking to yourself, what's important to me, and making yourself a priority is really, really important. And to just have a second now as well to think, how do you recharge and how does your child recharge? And make a note of this if you want to, or share if you feel comfortable, but it's really important to kind of see, because you might recharge with a glass of wine on a Friday night, a nice long bath, talking to a friend, going out on a walk. Your child might recharge, well, probably in different ways, not having a glass of wine on a Friday, but it might be kind of spending time with friends, it might be going outside, it might be stroking a pet, it might be spending time on a games console, PlayStation, Xbox, Netflix, anything like that. But thinking of how does your child recharge? Do they know what sort of things help them to calm down? Because they might like spending time on games consoles, but actually that kind of actually aggravates them more because they get really annoyed if they don't win, or they enjoy spending time outside but don't always know kind of when's the time to stop because they get too tired and then all of a sudden they're overtired. But just kind of having a think about, for you, how do you recharge and how does your child recharge, and how can you encourage kind of recharging and restful time at home? And does anyone feel comfortable sharing how they recharge or how their child recharges?
I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
So we've got a dog. So my recharge is I just escape out of the house whenever I can, really. Well, not whenever I can, but it sounds desperate, but sometimes it does feel like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, it's just to be on my own, just me and the dog, all weathers, because as a lot of people I'm sure find when they've got dogs, it tends to be just the one person who likes to go out all weathers.
Yes.
So I'm fine if it's pouring with rain. I don't care if it means I'm going to have a bit of time on my own.
Yeah, that's great.
And for our son, he's ADHD, ODD, ASD.
Okay.
And he is an absolute pure gamer.
Mm-hmm.
So for him, that is his time out. And it's really just about making sure that I've set the boundaries of, he's got a timer, so he knows how long he's got to have on there. And then we just try and go in with reminders. But that's his zone out time.
Fair.
But in turn, also the dog, just, sitting on the floor, laying with him.
Yeah.
Just chilling, really.
Yeah, I think pets can be really great for that as well, kind of going out for a walk. It kind of forces you to go out in the all weathers. I have a dog myself, and when it's raining outside, you don't want to go out, but you kind of, I've got to. And when you're actually out, it actually makes you feel better, which is great. So thank you for sharing.
Good.
Does anyone else feel comfortable sharing? If not, don't worry.
My difficulty with my son is he finds it hard to sit down and recharge. Non-stop. He just doesn't know how to sit down and unwind. He does love gaming, but even playing that, he's getting quite pent up, angry. I wouldn't say recharging, I say he's actually making himself more angry, and then that makes me not want him to be on there because I don't like the way he's acting on there. And then it has a knock-on effect for the rest of the day. It can do, he'll take it out on my daughter and start on her, or mess about with the dog, but trying to wind her up, if you know what I mean. And even when we all try and sit down and relax and unwind, he doesn't. He'd be rolling around he just doesn't know how to relax. So open to any suggestions on how to help him recharge, really. I do dog walking. That's what I do. I walk my dog. On the phone, that's me recharging, and having a bit of quiet time in my room, watching a bit while they play their games. So that's me recharging. But for him, I'm open to it.
Does he like doing anything outside? Do you have a garden that he can go out and play in, or is that something?
I've got a small garden. He loves football, which I have now got him in on a Monday. They're going to start that next week, going to football practice on a Monday, which was really good and really good for him. For his mental, for their mental state. But other than that, he is an outdoorsy person, but he wants me to be with him all the time. He likes playing games, but his sister doesn't. She wants to unwind quite often coming in, and then he wants someone to play with him all the time. So if we get any quiet moment, it's like, right, should we play a game? Who wants to play a game? And it's just constant. Like, can you not just relax?
So he finds it really difficult to relax independently. It's very much needs to have kind of
a lot of energy. A lot of nervous energy, or just the way, just energy. I don't know, but he's just got so much energy. He doesn't know how to sit and unwind. He likes YouTube. I have to say that's something that maybe, it's all gaming based. It's nothing It's
Yeah.
you know, it's not.
And and it's something that's really common when you think of gaming consoles, whether that's iPads or Xboxes or phones or anything like that. It's a really multi-sensory experience. You've got your iPad in front of you, you've got those bright pictures, it's really close, it's very immersive, and they're designed to be addictive. When things happen, they vibrate. Yeah, they vibrate. The controllers vibrate, which give you that positive feedback in your hand, which is that sensory. You've got that kind of auditory stimulation, whether it's music in the background or kind of a pinging noise when you get coins or when you do things right. So it is kind of very immersive. So it does then make it really difficult for children to relax, because when you're doing a game, you're getting lots of dopamine and that kind of happy chemical, that's really, really addictive, and kind of your dopamine tolerance increases because you're used to doing something that stimulates kind of all your senses. So when you then have to sit down and do some colouring, which is just kind of some sensory experience because you're colouring in a little bit of visual but not as bright as a game, the kind of the disparity between the two makes it kind of almost boring, even if it's something that he usually enjoys. But it's that comparison. So like you said, setting really clear boundaries on screen time is really, really important, because you can see how it affects his behaviour, but also it kind of allows that dopamine to reset. It allows that high level to start coming down so that he can then focus on other activities as well. But yeah,
I do have to say though, but what, you know, letting him come off so having a boundary with the timing with him, for example, you're going to go on there for half an hour. It's what he does when he comes off it. It's the issue, if I'm honest. I could happily let him, you know, God, it'd be so much easier for me just to let him play the games. But coming off of it, that's when the problems. So he'll go and his sister, he'll go and annoy her, or he just, and then that's where the bad behavior starts, because it's like, no, hang on a minute, I want to, you know, I'm going to get all your attention, and whether it's negative or not, because I'm not gaming anymore, and that's the problem I have with him.
So it's finding things for him that work in terms of helping him to recharge. So spending time together, just thinking of things that he can do, and maybe it's kind of making some sort of, you can make like a jar with lollipop sticks and they've got activities on that he can do independently, so he can go in and pick one out and know what to do himself. But doing something like that with him, although it will take, you'll need to give your attention to him to think together, okay, so what things do you like doing that maybe you can do by yourself, or kind of with minimal support for when you're off your devices because you find it difficult, and just kind of coming up with suggestions and having all those, maybe a list, post-its or lollipop sticks in a jar or anything like that. Then he knows where to go to when he is kind of feeling in that mood with all that energy, whether it's kind of just going into the garden and kicking a ball around, or whether it's kind of asking to help make dinner or laying the table or doing little things to kind of get rid of that pent up energy, but in a kind of a productive way that doesn't affect the cycle.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just thinking of something for him to do. I normally say, go and play your Lego or anything, but I think setting maybe challenges or something, it might appeal to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And often as well, we kind of try and think of to do everything for our children, like, oh, what do they like? But often they can come up with the best suggestions. So just getting them in, it's just about getting them in that right pocket of time though, when, okay, so what sort of things do you like and doing? What sort of challenges could you give yourself? It could be kind of create an obstacle course in the garden. It could be kind of draw a treasure map around the house, and little things that kind of he might want to do, but just kind of needs that bit of encouragement.
I think you're right. I'll try that.
Yeah, fab. And Claire, thank you for sharing as well. Said kind of spending time on your own, working towards your Open University degree, and kind of Harriet spending time on a trampoline. So yeah, so great kind of having those things in place. Okay, so this kind of week for home practice is kind of observing what you pay attention to. So like the video, is there times when your children or child are actually showing really great behaviours that we maybe want to pay more attention to, or is any behaviours that they're kind of showing that are negative that we can kind of start withdrawing our attention from? Having a go at completing an ABC chart. I'm happy to send templates if needed, or you can just do it on a bit of paper in your phone notes. It doesn't have to be anything kind of special, but just so when we meet next week, you can maybe feel comfortable sharing an example, or kind of highlighting for yourself what sort of function of behaviour your kind of child challenging behaviour seems to be stemming from. And then also just considering yours and your child's thoughts, feelings, behaviour, thinking of that cycle and thinking of, is there anywhere in that cycle at the moment that you think you could step in and change the way things are going? And it might just be you kind of know which area you want to work on. You might not know exactly what to do yet, but just kind of highlighting where we are now is really, really important, so we know kind of what to work on. And also really, really importantly, probably the most important, is remembering to recharge, kind of moving yourself towards that top of that list. So make sure you kind of have time for yourself, and that self-care is really important. So doing things to help you recharge, encouraging your child to help them learn to recharge themselves as well is really important. Okay, so in the chat as well, we're just going to do some feedback, and I'm just going to do this end of every week. So just kind of in the chat, per person, if you can put your well-being, so thinking of how have you been feeling this week on a scale from 0 feeling rubbish to 10 feeling fantastic, kind of put a number in there. And then our group goal for the 6 weeks is to learn more about challenging behaviour and the different ways to help manage your child's behaviour. If you can give the rating from 0, no idea, to 10, I know exactly what to do in the group. And then your personal goal for this week, which we talked about, setting that you kind of put your suggestions of what you want to work on in the chat. Again, from 0, kind of haven't started, to 10 being completed. That would be great. And then what we'll do is, again, I'll keep a note of them each week, and then at the end of the week I can kind of show your progress over time. But if you've got any questions on that, kind of please feel free to ask away. Feel free to share in the group chat to everyone, or just kind of directly to me, kind of whatever you feel comfortable sharing with.
Sorry, the group goal, what was that again?
Yes, the group goal there is to learn more about challenging behaviour and different ways to help manage. So from 0 to 10, so 0 being kind of you don't know about challenging behaviour, you don't know what to do, and 10's like the goal's being achieved. And the same for your personal goal. And then like 5's about halfway through as well. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of a way for us to track how things are going. And while kind of people are filling that in, that's great. Have you got any questions? Want me to clarify anything? Kind of any feedback in general of things that you would like me to kind of make sure I cover in future sessions? It's okay. Fab. Yeah. Claire, a recording is going to be sent out to everyone. Would you like a copy of the slides in addition to the recording? Would that be helpful?
Yes,
okay.
Please. Yes, please.
Yeah, yes, please. I like paperwork, so I'd like to get it there.
Yeah, okay, I'll get a copy sent of that as well.
Yeah,
I know it's hard to remember kind of everything I've been talking at you for the last hour, and it's hard to remember everything. I kind of get that. And again, for the 6 weeks, we're not expecting kind of really big changes. Often it might be kind of a couple of months after that you kind of start noticing changes, and that's absolutely okay. Then you'll have them to kind of go back on as well.
Yeah, can I too as well? Can I have
yeah, what I'll do, I'll send them to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sorry, it says Ian Ward, but I don't think your name is Ian. Now I can see you. Can I take your name for the register? If you're able to unmute yourself.
Hi Caroline, hi everybody. I'm Philippa Ward. I'm on the early response team.
Oh, fab.
And I call parent carers.
Yeah.
So
fab.
Hello Rachel. I called you last week.
You did. Hello, nice to see you.
I'm so pleased you joined tonight. It's been very interesting, Caroline. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm glad it's been helpful. But yes, thank you for joining this evening, ladies. And I'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.